Okay, welcome to Firewall. I'm your host, Bradley Tusk. Today is a special episode. Me and Chris Coffey, we're going to talk about the election. Wanted to just start, before we even get into all the specifics, with just, I know how bad I feel right now. And in fact, I was just saying to everyone here before we started that I thought I had prepared myself emotionally for this. And walking over here this morning, I probably realized I didn't. But to all the women in my life, I mean, I fucking feel terrible, right? That, in 2016, when Hillary lost, you could pin it on the fact that she was an incredibly unique, divisive candidate in many ways, that we had just come off of 8 years of Obama and people wanted to change. There's lots of different things that you could chalk it up to. But Kamala is different in that she's not that divisive, right? She is a perfectly fine to not pretty good politician, and they ran a perfectly fine, if not pretty good campaign, and yet she lost decisively to a fucking monster. And what that says about this country, what it says about our views on women, what it says about the progress or lack thereof that we have made, and what it says about the future and how you must feel if you're a woman, African American too, but I think especially a woman because we have had a black president. Just must be fucking terrible. And so to anyone listening to this, I'm just sorry that you're going through this, because it really sucks. So anyway, Chris, how are you feeling?
I feel really sad. I voted, a week and a half ago with my daughter, and I let her fill out the box for Kamala, and she's been walking around all week saying the first woman president. And she woke up this morning and was like, what happened? It's like, we got to tell her that Donald Trump won. And it's just, I think I was emotionally prepared a month ago for Trump, but A, certainly in the last couple of weeks, I started to think that she was going to pull it out. And B, even if I thought that he was going to pull it out, even if I was like somewhat prepared, the margins are just...
Yeah.
And I agree, by the way, I agree with you. I think she ran a fine race. Like, it wasn't about the vice president. It wasn't about
there's no one decision. It's not like if
Yeah.
Shapiro had been the VP, she would have won. It's not like when Hillary refused to go campaign in Wisconsin. I mean, there's no single or even two or three things like that. I mean, it was just a decisive thing by the voters. So we're going to do a couple of the questions around sort of the big picture. And then I think, just because there is no shortage of people like Chris and me saying what they think what this all means, we're going to pivot to the stuff that we actually do have some expertise in. So that's going to be New York, tech, and then some of the issues that we work on, like hunger and mobile voting and reproductive rights. And so, but big picture, I guess, Chris, the first question would be, and this is a leading question because we already texted about this earlier, but do you think that another Democrat would have beat Trump?
No, I talked to Richie Torres this morning, who I think tweeted this, but also had an interesting point, which was, like 70% of people thought we were headed in the wrong direction. And like, you just don't win elections that. They're not, if 70% of people think you're headed in the wrong direction, they're not going to pick the person who leads the party that they think is going in the right direction.
Right. So even if Biden a year and a half ago said, hey, I'm not up for a second term, and there was a whole process, and Gretchen Whitmer or Josh Shapiro or Gavin Newsom emerges from it, in your view, probably the same outcome.
No, what do you
I think so too. I think if it had been, again, one or two things, and you can go back and say, well, maybe if this had been different, maybe if that had been different. But he won the popular vote.
He won the popular vote, and such big warning flags like the Latino vote. That's like, oh man. Because if you can't win, you can't put up numbers with Latino votes. The black vote doubled for Trump, which doubled from nothing. I mean, it was 8, and now it's 16 to 20 or something like that. But that's a big, it's a big jump. And the Latino vote, I mean, I saw a county in Texas that was like plus 12 for Biden that went to Trump by 34 points.
Yeah.
It's like,
when I saw the Broward County results last night, and Trump was up so much in such a heavily Latino community, I was trying not to overreact to it, but you kind of knew.
There were just no glimmers of hope left. It was like, you could write off Florida, and then we never thought we were going to win Georgia. It's always the blue wall. But things tell a story throughout the night. And the story all night, we were texting. I was kept trying to be like, maybe the blue wall.
Yeah, you were the most optimistic person
I tried, I was like really doing my best. But the blue wall is not going to be different. If you see that sort of movement among that many groups of folks, it would be unique that all of a sudden in these 3 states, she's going to trounce him with Latinos and pick up those black votes and keep it. Just didn't happen.
Let me throw a theory at you, and I think it fits exactly with what Richie said, which is, and I've been saying this for a while, I think we are in a world for the foreseeable future of typically having one-term executive incumbents, meaning people will generally not win re-election. I think the presidency is the most severe of that, but I think we'll see examples at the state and local level as well. And the reason why is when you run for office, you run saying the world is no good and I'm going to fix it, right? And then given all of the structural problems with our system, it is so impossible to actually achieve meaningful change. And even if you can, it might be on one or two issues over a long period of time, right? So like Obama did the Affordable Care Act, and I think now society is starting to see the benefits of it, but it took more than a decade to even get to that point. So no one in a 4-year period is going to be able to do anything they promised to do, given the structural problems we have that sort of skew everything towards the extremes. And so as a result, by definition, everyone says, you promised to fix this, you didn't do it, I'm trying the other person. And I think that's made just whiplashes back and forth between party control and one-term presidents, one-term governors, one-term mayors. And until we fix the underlying structural problems, I think this is the way things are going to be.
Man, is that sad? I mean, that might be. I had not thought about that, but it sounds totally possible. Yeah.
And the other thing, before we start pivoting to our areas of a little more expertise, would be, and you and I talked about this yesterday. I was walking home from the office, and I called you about a work thing, and then we were talking about just sort of anecdotal stuff like lines in Philly or things that Trump was tweeting or what the culinary workers were saying in Nevada. And I remember we talked about, and I kind of did the usual refrain of like, are we sure this isn't just, me and you and a bunch of people who all want the same outcome, talking to each other and reinforcing what we want to hear and then believing it more and more each time as opposed to reality. And then, once I kind of got off the phone, it's like, no, I think maybe Chris is right and we're okay. But the reality is exactly what was happening.
Yeah, there was empirical data throughout the campaign, especially the last few weeks, that told a tough story. And it wasn't just one thing, it was like a bunch of the things. And so whether it's the right track, wrong track, whether it's the betting markets, which were all overwhelming, whether it's a lot of the polls, and then really over the last 2 weeks, the early voting numbers just weren't good. In 2020, Joe Biden had 1 million votes banked heading into Election Day in Pennsylvania. She had 400,000. And he and Biden only won Pennsylvania by 100,000 votes. It's just math. And so Republicans felt really good. They kept pointing to that. And Democrats would say, well, but you're just getting your election day folks to vote early. And we didn't put in a lot of effort to voting early and COVID and whatever. The fact is they had a 600,000 vote swing in early voting. And so even in Philadelphia last night, it was like, oh, the line's around the corner. We're going to get record turnout. But it wasn't record turnout plus 600,000.
Right.
It was record election day turnout. But they lost 600,000 votes in Philadelphia. I don't mean in Pennsylvania, they lost those early votes, and there's just no way to make up for it. The other thing I was wondering, sort of like, I like many people had many hot takes over the last bunch of years, many of which are wrong. So obviously I don't want to talk about any of the wrong ones. I will try to talk about maybe one right one or one that I wonder what you think. I think Joe Biden should have pardoned Donald Trump. I think there was a feeling among independents and among Republicans for sure, and even moderate Republicans, that the Justice Department and Joe Biden politicized the criminal justice system. I don't agree with that. I think many Democrats don't agree. I said that to my brother, who's super progressive.
Do you think Alvin Bragg should have tried Trump for that?
No, I think they should have. I think there should not have been any charges that stemmed from Trump's time as president. Whether you agree with that, like whether he should be in jail, whether he shouldn't be, it almost doesn't matter. The politics of it is so bad. Like Gerald Ford pardoning Richard Nixon was a good thing for this country. It allowed us to move on. Yeah. Now, I don't know. I think Donald Trump would have run anyway. I think it's not like that would have solved everything. But I do think there is some reflection that Democrats have to do, me included, about the root causes of why we are where we are. And there's going to be folks that say we need to move to the left. And there's going to be folks in the center that say you have to move to the right. But whatever the root causes are, like folks need to have that conversation, because you can't come back and try the same things and expect to have.
Yeah, and I have to say, I really don't think the answer is about if we were more populist or less populist or more centrist or more focused on men or less focused on men. I think it's structural. Let's talk about New York, where you and I like to focus. I do think that there is a impact last night on New York politics, and I'll throw a few at you, and you tell me if you agree. One, Eric Adams is playing very hard for a Trump DOJ to drop the charges, and this doesn't mean that will happen, but obviously it makes it more likely than if Harris had won. And I think Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, will have to now move very quickly with superseding charges if he wants to file them. Two, I think had Harris won, given the sort of general unpopularity of whoever the incumbent is, I think a Republican moderate would have been a viable contender for governor in 2026. And I think now that that's probably not going to be the case, it probably does help Kathy Hochul or whoever the Democratic nominee is for governor. Third, same thing in New Jersey. Typically, Jersey tends to do the opposite of what the country did. Their gubernatorial elections the year following the presidential. So when Obama won in 08, Chris Christie won in 09. When Trump won in 16, Phil Murphy won in 17. I think that the Democratic nominee in Jersey, whoever it is, hopefully Josh Gottheimer, but whoever it is, will be more likely to win that general election too.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with New Jersey, though. It was huge warning flags. I mean, I've never seen New Jersey.
6 points.
5.5, 6 points. Yeah. I've never seen that.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to Josh last night, and he was saying, look, this is what Jersey is. I've been saying this all along. I mean, Josh has run all 5 of his House campaigns, which have succeeded, have been incredibly centrist campaigns. And this has been his point about New Jersey from day one. And I think maybe in a weird way, it will wake some people up. But on the flip side, maybe it just gives more energy to the left.
Or not, yeah, or not. We don't have a lot of evidence of either side of the Democratic Party, the moderate side or the progressive side, being like, you know what, let's take this wake-up call. And I mean, that doesn't. Then
everyone just reads what they want to read.
Yeah, they want to read into it. For new listeners, Josh is Josh Gottheimer, who's your brother-in-law.
Yes,
just making
congressman
sure.
for New Jersey.
I know that, and he's running for governor.
Not officially, but I think.
Oh, shit.
I think it's. Did you just break the news?
No, you said it.
He's running for governor. I don't think he's announced formally, but yes.
I'm trying to look for glimmers of hope.
So all right, let's work backwards.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. The Eric Adams thing. For a second.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Who do you think that Eric Adams voted for?
Trump.
Who do you think that the whole senior staff voted for?
Trump.
Do you think that
of the political staff?
Yeah, the political staff. I don't mean like the deputy mayors. I mean like political staff. Do you think that Eric Adams and Donald Trump were talking in the weeks leading up to? There's been a lot of report. Yes. So do I.
Yeah. So
now he couldn't endorse him because if you endorsed him, then the day after the election,
it actually it makes it harder for Trump to do it.
It makes it hard for Trump, and I think then Hakeem and Greg Meeks and Sharpton, who have been, then it's like, fuck that guy.
Right.
And the day
now,
after.
Let me ask you a question. So let's, a few things. So obviously, Trump takes office January 20th. A new U.S. attorney will take office January 21st, even an interim at that point. So before we even get to the point where maybe they could drop the charges, do you think that the U.S. attorney is now going to move quickly to file? He has said he's going to file superseding charges. And then B, given that Adams sort of all but endorsed Trump, do you think Hakeem and Sharpton and Meeks and other black leaders who have been protecting Adams to some extent will now say, fuck that guy?
Well, there's been a lot of rumors that if there's a superseding indictment that the governor will move on him. I just don't know I just don't know. I just don't know. And I tweeted something last night about how he probably voted for, helps his legal strategy that Trump won. And I got a ton of pushback like, what does it matter? He's done. He can't run for re-election anyway. And it's like, we'll see about that. I would think if I were Donald Trump and I just doubled my black vote and my sophistication level about politics, which I should knock him because maybe
he's won 2 presidential
Yeah, he's won 2 presidential. Fuck do I know?
Right.
But I would think he would think that pardoning Eric Adams would be a phenomenally
And
popular.
when you say pardon, you mean dropping the charges?
No, I mean pardoning him. Can't he pardon? Can't he whatever he? I mean, he can't. I don't know that he can drop the charges. I don't know if there's a legal question about he could put someone else in there.
I'm pretty sure.
Once you've brought
no, but I think the new U.S. attorney probably could.
I think you have to go to a judge and ask.
Yeah, but I think they can do it.
They could go to a judge and say we're done.
Yeah,
because you can't pardon him because he hasn't been convicted.
He hasn't been convicted or anything yet. He hasn't,
whatever the legal apparatus.
Right, but anyway, make it go away.
Make it go away and take credit for it. I don't even not like a quiet behind like the Justice Department's after me. They went after him for being with me, and we're you can see it. It's like it's going to happen.
I'm getting super into the weeds here, but if I'm Hochul, right? On one hand, I love the idea, just purely politically, of removing Adams because you're going to get 1 to 2 or 3 of your potential challengers, would-be challengers in the 26th primary, instead in this mayoral race. So Cuomo, Tish James, Richie Torres, of whom somebody wins and then they're out of the way, and other people are sort of tarnished because they lost. At the same time, if we now think that a Democratic victory statewide is more likely in 26 because there'll be backlash to Trump, will Hochul be even more conservative and not wanting to piss off black voters and therefore even more cautious about removing Adams? So,
I mean, I agree with you about Hochul being in a better place with a Trump presidency, but that doesn't protect her in a primary. And I would be shocked unless she can get her numbers to change. But if her numbers don't change, she's going to get primaried, and the Trump thing I don't think helps her. I think it probably hurts her.
No, I think it helps whoever the Democratic nominee for governor is.
So she has to ask herself, and again, I think she's going to look at Hakeem. I think she's going to look at Al Sharpton. I think she's going to look at Greg Meeks, because if they're going to give her grief or not give her public support for moving him, she's not going to move him because you would not risk. She's going to think this is going to damage me with black voters, and you're running in a primary. You're going to need some black voters.
Yeah, and what does it get her? There was a Times poll like a week ago, and Adams was third at 12% in the mayoral, and those are mainly going to be black voters. And so, I don't think. Now, with that said, I think some of it also depends on what the superseding charges are. Right, if it's more stuff that's sort of vague and confusing, like straw donors and flight upgrades, I don't think anything really changes. If it is a tangible example of bribery, if Adams putting money in his pocket.
I don't think we've heard that.
But so I'm saying, I think that to a certain extent, what the charges are is going to have a big impact because no one understands the current charges. They're totally confusing to regular people. Whereas, when Bob Menendez got gold bars, like everyone understood that, right? So I think part of it's going to depend on what that is too. So last night, and I only saw the city sent out an email right as I was kind of walking here, so I didn't really have a chance to more than glance at it, but said that New York City was 68-30 Harris.
Yep.
So let me throw a thesis at you. Putting the special election aside, if I'm Andrew Cuomo, there's going to be more energy on the left because of Trump. People will be more riled up and upset. At the same time, the fact that a lot of the congressional candidates on the Republican side did win, some lost in Long Island, Hudson Valley, but some won, and that Trump got 30%, would make me at least think, you know what? If I could convince Ed Cox and the Republican Party to leave that line blank, and I run as an independent, and I'm up against Brad Lander or Scott Stringer or someone like that, I'll get all of the Trump votes, and then I'll get a lot of Democrats who don't want another sort of incompetent leftist running City Hall, and he is better off running as an independent in the general than he is running in a Democratic primary.
So I just don't think he'll think that. I think he'll think that I'm the guy that stood up to Trump. That's what Democrats see me as. I don't
think anyone remembers that.
I
don't even know what he stood up for Trump about.
COVID. I was the COVID guy, and I was the alternative to Trump during COVID. I think
for COVID, he's remembered for the nursing home thing now.
Yeah.
So
I think he's going to run as a Democrat, and I think it'll have an Andrew Yang-like effect where all the attention and everything is on him, and it allows some other person to probably scoot right.
You think that person is Tish, Richie?
No, I don't think Tish runs. I don't think Richie runs unless maybe there's a special. I think it's like Brad Lander or something. I mean, we'll see, but. One of the things that the presidential may have taught us is like sometimes it just is what it is, and like these are the candidates. One of these guys is probably going to win. Andrew Cuomo plus the guys that are in the people that are in the field, and like I don't think Tish wants to run unless Tish thinks that she has someone paves the way, clears the field, and no one's clearing the field. So
So you're saying that if it was her versus Cuomo and all the other people dropped out in deference to Tish, she might do it.
Yeah, but this guy, Zoran, whatever the guy is, he's not dropping out. He's out there banging the drums.
Yeah, sure. Why would he?
Why would he?
All right.
And by the way, he raised more money in one day than any candidate for mayor in the city's history except Andrew Yang on Andrew's first day. That's it, which Andrew set like had national ID and
Yeah.
This guy raised a ton of money and it's all matchable. He's not dropping out.
Yeah. And by the way, his presence is arguably more incentive for Cuomo to run in a primary because he'll suck up a lot of votes.
Yeah, I think Cuomo's going to run, and I think it'll be Cuomo versus whoever.
Right. So it's going to depend if there's a special or not.
And by the way, I assume that if Eric is, but I think reporters think that Eric is basically out, and I don't think Eric thinks he's out. I think Eric
doesn't think that, but keep in mind he had the lowest approval rating of any mayor in New York City history before he got indicted. So, and the city doesn't feel materially better than it did before. So whatever people didn't like before hasn't changed. So I still don't really see. I mean, I think he thinks that he'll get the reason he wants the trial to happen in April is so that by mid-May, in his mind, he's been acquitted and vindicated, and then kind of rides that momentum to victory in late June.
So I had someone call me this week who was really, really sad about their relationship with another elected because they were like, it's always about them. It's never like they never. And it's like every elected is a narcissistic, right? Like all about, they're in their own world. They're not in the regular worlds. It's all about them. Everything's about them. And they have a warped view of what people see them as. And so I look at Eric Adams, like, I think he thinks he's going to run. I think he says, well, Donald Trump just came back he had no approval rating. He just came back and won. And, I don't see an alternative. And that's what I'm going to do too. And I think we see that over and over again among people that are just warped. Yeah. I mean, by the way, Joe Biden a week ago saying like, if I'd been on the top of the ticket, I would have won. It's like, okay, well, that's warped, right? Like, I don't think anyone thinks that, but people are in their own mind, in their own world.
Yeah. So, all right, let's pivot a little bit to some other areas where I think we do have some expertise. So this one would be tech.
I think we had expertise in New York.
For sure.
We sounded expertise.
Yeah,
you're saying more.
No, I'm moving to other areas of expertise.
As opposed to my hot takes.
So tech, I'll just riff a little bit and feel free to jump in. A few points to note. One is that the regulation of tech is primarily state and municipal, not federal. So even though when we all think about politics, we think about Washington, and even though participation in a presidential election was, 65+%, and a city council could be 7%. The reality is, from a tech perspective, those city council races, those state senate races, those mayoral races, those gubernatorial races matter a lot more. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of the areas where we will see now change in a Trump administration that will impact tech, there are a few to me that are probably notable. The first would be crypto. Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, has probably been the worst regulator for crypto in history. Trump has been heavily supported by the crypto community. I don't know who he's going to put in to run the SEC, but I believe they're going to be extremely crypto friendly. And I think they may even agree that the CFTC should regulate crypto as a commodity rather than a security. Chris, one thing that I know we work on quite a bit is helping crypto exchanges obtain BIT licenses in New York. Yep. Do you think the BIT license survives, or do you think the SEC finds a way to say no one needs this?
I think it's going to be hard for them to do that without Congress, and I assume that the BIT license will. And interestingly, there's not a consensus among crypto companies in getting rid of the BIT license, right? Because
if you have it, you want
to have it, you want to keep it,
right?
And you
but
don't
it would have,
want other people
I would
to
say
get in.
I don't know that the Congress part matters as much because Fit 21 passed. This year with a significant bipartisan margin. So this is not a sort of down the line party.
No, definitely not.
But you're right. But if the major players are all saying, you know what, leave it.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of split, including their biggest
for
donors.
Sure. And by the way, California is thinking about a similar process of which if I'm Coinbase, I might say, you know what, great, because I'll get it. I'll sort of muscle through and I'll get it. Yep. It'll cost me some money, but it'll be fine. And a new entrant might have a really hard time. So that's crypto.
And I don't know if you saw the numbers on what the crypto folks raised and spent in the election.
That was incredible.
It was like, off the charts.
I haven't seen any Bitcoin trading since the election, but there were reports that they thought it would go up to $90,000 if Trump wins. And so we'll keep an eye on that. Second is, the FTC, we talk about that a lot in this podcast, obviously has been very, very anti-M&A activity, anti-corporate activity. That's clearly going to change. Lena Khan will be removed immediately as soon as Trump takes office. So the first point is, I think what we will see is a lot more regular M&A activity. There was sort of a chilling effect on that under Khan. I don't know that she even meant to do this necessarily, but I think her antipathy towards just capitalism in general led a lot of sort of potential deals that probably didn't even require FTC approval, to be honest, to just sort of not happen.
Yep.
With that said, the thing that I like a lot that Khan has done is to go after really big tech, because I think those are giant monopolies that really hurt innovation. And on one hand, the assumption would be, well, that's not going to happen. On the other hand, J.D. Vance is very much... So there is this weird circle that meets between the far left and the far right on antitrust.
And they're going to listen to Elon. I mean, Elon and J.D. And I don't know, man. Elon does not... Elon has a lot... He was tweeting about Google last night.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I
so
don't
Elon's
know.
biggest need... Let's talk about him. What are the things that he... So one is... The area where I think he will probably win the most from a federal standpoint is not actually more contracts, because he has gotten them and will get them anyway, because he has the service that does the things that the government needs. It's that Section 230. There's no shot now, in my view, that Trump tries to repeal it, and there's not enough support to repeal it to override a presidential veto. Right. So that's to protect Twitter, because I think the business model of all of the platforms is significantly weaker without that legal protection that says that they can't be sued for the content posted by their users. Starlink will continue to get a ton of government contracts. SpaceX will get even more. But the reality is they don't have a ton of competitors. So I think they did fine under Biden. They would have done fine under Harris. They'll do well under Trump. And the Tesla stuff, truth is, the Democrats tend to be generally more favorable to that than Republicans anyway. So I think 230 is the big win that Elon gets, his payoff. And if he encourages Trump to go after the big portfolio companies, that might happen.
And he's running the transition
He's
running the transition with Howard Lutnick, and he's going to be a huge player. He's running this government innovation thing, and I think he thinks he's going to be now. Whether Trump doesn't have a huge history of having big folks with big personalities who are going to take up.
No, because eventually he'll get upset if Elon gets too much attention, and then that'll come to.
But this is Elon. I don't know. Like I don't know. This is different. This is different than that guy that was his chief of staff the first time.
Yeah, but Peter Thiel had this, and it blew up. Yeah.
Yep. And
And then, this is a little one, well, not that little. So, autonomous vehicle regulations have been stalled for almost a decade now, mainly because Trump and Biden both killed them at and these would be regulations that would allow for interstate commerce in autonomous vehicles at the behest of the Teamsters. The Teamsters decidedly did not endorse Harris, which was a quasi-endorsement of Trump. So I imagine that AV regulations will remain bottled up for the next 4 years.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I would throw another one in there, which I think is the betting markets, which had this bananas night last night, and a lot of skepticism. We do some work for Polymarket. Polymarket is not legal in the United States, and I think is regulated by the CFPB. And I think
they will come up with a way to change that.
You could see if your Donald Trump was mentioning Polymarket and the betting platforms all down the stretch, they were tweeting about them. Elon was tweeting about them. We'll see what happens.
And then in terms of other stuff, I would say we're big investors in telemedicine. I don't believe that CMS will materially change their approach to it one way or the other, because it happens to be one of those issues that both sides like for different reasons, but everyone sort of tends to generally be pretty supportive of it. Defense, they're going to continue to procure new technology. I think that would have happened either way. So a lot of stuff will just sort of proceed. The final tech question would be TikTok. I don't see a world where Congress passes a new law to overturn what they did. I guess the question would be, if Trump now wants to protect TikTok at the behest of various people who supported him, could he tell DOJ no longer support the law in court? Does he even have the legal authority to do that?
I mean,
right.
He's going to pick an attorney general who does what he wants, and he'll tell him what to do. We haven't.
Yeah.
We
now
really
the court may
haven't
not
seen a
care, because there's already been hearings, and the D.C. appellate court was pretty clearly deferential to the congressional law. I think it will be hard for Trump to unwind it, but we might see that, and that could be interesting. So the final round of stuff would be issues that out of Tusk Philanthropies we work on that are impacted by this. So the three big things we do, the two big things are mobile voting and hunger, and then to a lesser extent abortion via telemedicine. So on voting, as you noted earlier, Chris, or you did in a text to me, not on the podcast, ranked choice voting had a horrible night last night. It passed in D.C., but it lost basically everywhere else. On the flip side, and I don't think I have a conclusion yet as to what this means for mobile voting, so I'll just lay out my thoughts in no particular order, and then you tell me how you see it. So one would be, on one hand, what we won't have are months of fighting about whether or not the election was rigged and fixed and everything else. So that's probably good, right? Because pre-Trump, there was a general confidence in the election system because there actually is no vote fraud in real life. I mean, in your 20, 25 years in politics now, like, have you ever encountered real voter fraud?
No.
No, me either. And I fucking worked in Chicago, right? So, like, it's not a real thing. So it's probably helpful from that perspective to not have Trump screaming about this for the next couple of months. At the same time, you know, I would imagine Trump would look at mobile voting and say, this is not good for me. And the good news is it's not regulated at a federal level. So it probably, my biggest hope from Washington would have been, had Harris won, that we could get DARPA and some of the federal agencies to start partnering with us on the tech build, as opposed to me just doing it all myself, which I think now is highly unrealistic. But in a, you know, where I'm going to go hit city councils next year around the country to try to legalize this for municipal elections, school boards, city council, stuff like that, and it's generally going to be in blue cities. Do you think there's no impact? Do you think sort of the backlash to Trump will help us? Do you think the reaction to the election will mean that people will be afraid to do this? How do you see it?
I think certainly the backlash of Trump in municipal elections, I mean, we should assume that if it's anything like 2017 and 18, that Democrats rally, and especially in these cities, that even these numbers that he's got now, they will turn against him. There'll be, you know, deportations, and they're going to go into places and throw migrants out of the country. And I just don't think, I think the watching that every night and having kids ripped out of their, you know, like whatever. So I assume that those cities will be rabidly anti-Trump, and that folks will look for ways to get that vote up. And the problem is it's not going to hurt Trump to do mobile voting in a municipal election in Seattle. But I think in some ways it'll be easier. I think the hard part is that, you know, all of these states last night where it just got killed, you know, these open primaries just got killed, ranked choice got, I mean, really, eight.
But I will say, if we get back to the structural problems, the reason why it is so hard for executives anywhere to get anything done is either you have the polarization of Washington, which is the result of incredibly low turnout in congressional primaries, or you have the total one-sided nature of government at the extremes, whether it's state of Texas on the right, city of San Francisco on the left. Again, same root culprit, which is incredibly low turnout in state and local primaries. Yep. And so if we ever want to fix the structural problems so that things can start getting done again and people can start having confidence in their government again and feeling good about their government again, this is the only way to do it.
It's just not clear that 52% of the country wants to make those changes.
No, it's not.
And I'm not even like so sure on the 48% on this one. Like,
I mean, the good news is
it's not like Democrats are pioneers.
I'm not
on
trying
this.
to, you know, win a national vote on this thing. I'm trying to pass it in a handful of cities and just show
service members, you know,
people with
disabilities,
college students.
And certainly, I don't think that suffers because of last night.
Saw that.
But if you wanted ranked choice voting in some of these places going
I
forward,
mean, look, I am a supporter of ranked choice voting, but with that said, my criticism has always been, I think it's a good thing, but no one who wasn't going to go vote in a state Senate primary shows up because they can pick 4 people instead of 1. Right. So in terms of turnout, it doesn't have any positive impact, whereas I think mobile voting, where all of a sudden you enable everyone to do it, just makes it a lot easier. On hunger, so some good news and some bad news. So some good news, one is a race that you are heavily involved in, Delaware. Matt Meyer, who's the new incoming governor, has had a really great history of supporting school meals in his career as county executive to date. So I'm hopeful that he will put it in his budget next year. What do you think?
Yeah, we talked last night. He's super excited about winning, and you know, he had a good night. One of the few bright spots. One of 2 Jewish guys to win the governor's yesterday, I think. I saw that somewhere. So
Josh Stein, which is who we're about to get to, because what's interesting is Josh Stein won the governorship of North Carolina, not a surprise after Mark Robinson imploded. But Stein did have universal school meals in his platform. Now, lots of people have lots of things in their platforms that then just die right after that. But at the very least, we will go explore it and see if there's a path there. With that said, I haven't seen the Nevada state Senate results yet, but just given that Trump won Nevada, I think the notion that the Democrats were able to hold a veto-proof majority. Probably is not the case, in which case we're not going to be able to get school meals done there. We were hoping maybe that the legislature in Pennsylvania would become more favorable. Again, haven't seen it, but just given that Trump won Pennsylvania, unlikely. Same thing about Wisconsin. And then the bigger problem, of course, is that in, the Project 2025, which Trump has disavowed, but still, they actually support going the other way and eliminating CEP, the community eligibility provision, which is the underlying program that makes school meals happen, right? Yeah. And so now, do I think that Congress will actually eliminate school meals? No, because I think that it is really unpopular to do that. And I think that at best, the House will be Republican by a handful of votes, and I don't think you'll be able. I think that would be a party line of Democrat.
But they're going to have a lot of those 2025 people and agencies.
Yeah, but wherever they can sort of poke away at it at USDA or places like that, they're going to do that. Yeah. And so I think that we have our work cut out for us. And then the third issue is, we help create Mayday Health, which is an education nonprofit that shows women in red states how they can obtain abortion medication via telemedicine. I think this took a massive hit last night because, one, the FDA has said that the abortion meds, mifepristone and misoprostol, I think I'm mispronouncing them, but are legal federally, and then there was, nationally, and then there was a case went to the Supreme Court last year about that. The court ruled in favor of the FDA, but on procedural grounds, so you could see DOJ and the FDA changing their posture on that. Also, we've done this teleabortion stuff since Dobbs, which means that we have had, tacit support from DOJ and HHS and other federal agencies that at least haven't kind of gone after the doctors that are doing this. That very well might and likely change under Trump. And the only thing I would say is there are a lot of Democratic governors that could have passed shield laws to provide strict legal protection to medical professionals in blue states who help women in red states. And some states did it. New York did it. California did it. Massachusetts did it. Colorado did it. But New Jersey did not. Illinois did not. Maryland did not. There's lots of blue states that pride themselves on how liberal they are and how pro-choice they are and how progressive they are that didn't do shit. And I think it's necessary now more than ever. It might be too late, but I would still live to see those elected officials step up and at least try.
Yeah, that sounds right. They need to.
So look, let's just close it out with a macro point here, and feel free to jump in with the last word if you want, which is this sucks, right? There's no real silver lining here. It is a bad outcome for America and for the world when someone like Donald Trump is our choice to lead our nation. With that said, kind of once we get through processing this and licking our wounds and everything else, the only thing you can do is fight. The only thing you can do is try to make the world a better place. And when I say fight, I don't mean the MSNBC, DSA, just resist and scream about everything Trump says and does all day and just react to him. I mean, pick the issues that you care about. So for us, it's voting. For us, it's hunger. For us, it's abortion. Whatever your issues are, and work on those. And if it can't be done at a federal level, work on them at a state level, work on them at a local level, work on them at a community level, work on them at a philanthropic level. But ultimately, the way to feel better about ourselves and about the world that we live in is to take the things that we believe in and dedicate ourselves to them and try to make them happen. So, Chris, any?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I worry a little bit about the existential threat here and whether Trump leaves. And, this is someone who tried to stick around last time. And there's less checks in place. There's no Mike Pence. There's no, it's just a different. So hopefully the macro stuff works out. And folks should, embrace the things in their lives, local community. If you belong to a synagogue, if you belong to a church, if you, belong to a community group, embrace that and try to build on that, because now is when you need them, when all the stuff around you and the world is sort of crashing down. Do what you can to make life better here. I'm so super thankful for New York City and Brooklyn, frankly. I know it sounds crazy if you're living in whatever and it thinks, but that is what I think right now.
Okay. All right, Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Firewall is recorded in my bookstore, P&T Knitwear, located at 180 Orchard Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. We'd love to hear from you with questions, feedbacks, or idea for a guest. Just email me at bradley@firewall.media or find me on LinkedIn. And to keep up with what's on my mind and my latest writing, please follow my new Substack at bradleytusk.substack.com. Thanks again for listening.